Dude, I'll always laugh with this when we start. Always giving that consent.
That's the proper
What?
thing to do.
Yeah. Well, welcome BDSM followers. We are coming up with another episode here for the Booze, Dessert, Smoke and Meats. I
Mhm.
am Professor Porkloin, and I am here with my awesome co-host.
The meat Viking.
So, we are doing another episode of a state. So we've done California previously. This is the follow up to it because I think there's just so much to talk about in California. We've already talked about food, we've talked about some desserts, but definitely the wine, the alcohol, the smoke that's there just needed another episode. So here is part two of the California state. So we are moving along our our U.S. trip,
hmm
but
Like
uh,
California is probably my 14th favorite C word.
can only imagine what number one is.
Cookie.
Oh yeah, okay. So I guess we have to start off normal. What's in the cup?
It is relatively early session, and so I don't have any alcohol because I also have roughly 2 hours to drive one way, plus an all day outside event, plus 2 hours to drive home. So I am pretty much on the straight and narrow all day today. So I am
Ooh,
drinking energy drink.
that's a shame because I
It's
had
a
some
shame.
leftover beer from a party that I had a couple weeks ago,
Oh yeah.
and I decided to make beer with some fruit punch and then a little bit of some rum and a nice little orange slice in it to be all fancy. So it's kind of like a not a trash can punch, but leftover shit that you just needed to throw into a cup. It's actually not too bad.
It's like two steps down from full on jungle juice.
Yeah, two steps for sure because there's definitely not all the other crap that's in it.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what jungle juice is, would you like to educate our viewers?
Jungle juice or trash can punch is essentially you just take whatever you have left over from whatever party and just dump it all into one bin, mix it up with some Gatorade or fruit punch, throw a little bit of some sugar in there and a bunch of like fruit if you can, and then just drink it.
hmm
So,
It's not
it,
a good idea.
I mean, if you're having a party, it's a good idea,
Yeah.
but
Uh,
it will usually get you pretty tore up, and then usually you'll feel sick the next day from all the sugar.
or most likely that night.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the drinks where you need like that friend that's like, hey man, you've had too much here.
Um, All right, well, safe word. I got an idea because I see it right here. I stayed at a hotel a couple weeks back, and I wound up bringing some stuff home with me, and it's peanut butter, but Smuckers. I think that should be the
Muckers.
Smuckers should be the safe word for today.
I'm down for that.
It just sounds like it would be a funny word.
It sounds dirtier than what it is, that's for sure.
Yeah, Smuckers.
Although if you get peanut butter on yourself, I'm sure that's a mess to clean up.
Yeah, a little sticky.
A little sticky. Ah.
So
So the old California, huh? You have some experience on this topic that you'd like to get yourself into.
yeah, so like I said earlier, that I felt like California was just a big state that we needed to do a little bit of a second episode because we have to talk about some things that are also very predominant in California, and the first one is the wine.
hmm
I've been to California, I've been to San Diego, and I've been to San Francisco. So San Francisco is pretty close to Napa, just a little bit of a drive. It was super cool. I got to drive over the Golden Gate Bridge, which, if anybody has ever gone out that way, totally recommend doing it. And then stopping off at the little rest area afterwards, taking pictures, because then you can see Alcatraz and all that other stuff. But going up, I mean, California has definitely made its name for when it comes to wine, at least in the United States. Um, so for a long time, it's just been a basic fact that California has been one of those top producing states in the country when it comes to the grapes and the wines. Um, So it really comes down to the region and the fact that there's a lot of different climates that are within that region. Um, and it's super cool to kind of see that different climates will give different uh, tastes and flavors to the grapes. So particularly because California does have a lot of rainfall, that kind of helps. And then obviously the other dry kind of helps ripen the grapes to their full potential. So Napa is obviously a term that we hear all the time. Oh, Napa Valley. You hear the pretentious people like sipping up on the, this is good grapes from Napa, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's mainly because the area out that way is very similar to the Mediterranean climates, where a lot of those other grapes are grown. So like olive trees and things like that, and that's really really good because the sunny days and the waters of California and the hills and the mountains. Plus, California also has some volcanic soil that I've read and different types of clay, which also add to a lot of the things that grapes need in order for them to be perfect or for them to be ripe. So, man, just some of those is nuts. I'll talk about some grapes in a second, but I went to a couple of those wineries that are up there. So the first one that I went to was the Francis Coppola Winery,
Mm-hmm.
and you know who he is, right?
I do not.
You don't know Coppola?
Mm-mm.
Well, have you ever seen The Godfather?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's the one that directed that.
Okay.
So it's super cool, and all the wineries up there are like this. Um, the Coppola Winery, I think, is probably one of my favorite ones, just because it's basically like a resort. It's like your wine wonderland because you can go in, you can get your bottles, you can get your tastings, whatever. But then outside, they've got a pool, they've got like all this other crap, and it's basically made so that you could spend the day there. You could bring your family. You are meant to spend the day there. And I went. It was like 2013, I think, is when I went there. So that one is cool because he also has all of his movie stuff.
Hmm.
So Godfather, Dracula. Um, he's got like the armor of Dracula, which was super dope to see.
The Bram Stoker version, or
I know it's the Dracula one. I don't know which one.
okay. I was just curious. Until you said that he's got the Dracula armor, my first thought in reference to Godfather is, of course, the famous scene that I think everybody knows. And I just pictured that, maybe occasionally there's a winning customer in the lottery number and you wake up with a fake horse head in your bed, but your meal's free.
That'd be pretty funny. That'd
Yeah.
be pretty cool.
Yeah. Like, they do it every thousandth visitor or whatever. And then you just like, hey, you got the horse head, but guess what? Your whole trip refunded. Sorry for any trauma.
It's us.
It's us. Oops. Those of you who haven't seen The Godfather, though, for sure check it out. And then this brings me to the other question. Because Godfather is such an iconic movie, when you go to these villas, these like wine villas that you're going to,
Yeah.
is it does it have that aesthetic to it, like those buildings, or is that more of like what you would find in Sicily?
Um, the Coppola one has some really high peaks on
Mhm.
each side, and then like the pools in the middle, and everything is kind of like a little horseshoe almost
Okay.
with the tastings. I mean, it's kind of like a fancy. It doesn't have like, oh, I'm walking into Dracula or I'm walking into,
Hmm.
Godfather. They're kind of more, um, yeah, I guess I'd say Mediterranean like feel because you can
Okay.
see the grapes off in the background, you can see the restaurant and everything. But it's not like, hey, I'm walking in and it's like, holy shit.
Yeah. You're
It's
not
more of,
randomly walking down some grapevines and then you look to your right and you're like, why is Little Sicily over here?
yeah. So they have pavilions and stuff too, and I just like this one the best just because it had the pool, it had the restaurant. Like you could spend the day there. You
Mhm.
could probably spend a shit ton of money while you're there too. Because the other thing about them is that some of those wines are a little expensive, man.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's like, hey, you're gonna come to my place, you're gonna swim at my pool, you're gonna eat my food, but I'm also gonna screw you with a $50 bottle of wine
Oh yeah.
or more. Um, but it was still super fun to see uh, some of those costumes and some of the whole situation surrounding Coppola.
Mhm.
And what I didn't realize is that he started that in 2006.
Oh
So it's a
wow, that's relatively
fairly,
new.
yeah, fairly new um, chateau, if you want to call it, or property. And they really opened it in 2010. So there's been a lot of other wineries that have been around for a lot longer, but Coppola's been there for, 11 years now. And I feel like it was just so much better to go to that one. Don't get me wrong, I like the other ones too, but um, the other one that I went to was the Behringer Vineyards.
Okay.
Have you had any Behringer
I have.
which ones have you had, if you can remember?
That's going back, man. I'm not much of a wine drinker. I believe it was a white wine.
Yeah, I mean, they have a bunch of different wines up there.
Yeah. I can tell you this much. Keep in mind, foodies, I am not a wine fan. I drank it. It did the job that wine's supposed to do, and then I haven't bought it since.
I mean, I think wine is one of those things where some of the taste is an acquired stuff.
Right.
Like for me, I don't mind drinking red wine, but I also enjoy it much more if I'm eating food
Fair.
because there's a lot of pairings that you can do, and especially if you're gonna do like a steak, have
Mm,
a nice like uh, Pinot Noir or something with a steak, or having fish or something along those lines would just elevate that whole entire experience. Because I've been to a couple steakhouses where I've done that. It's like, all right, we're gonna get a red wine because I know I'm gonna get a ribeye. This one's gonna pair very well. So take a bite of the steak, take a little sip of the wine, and it's just, it enhances those flavors. So
hmm
totally understandable if it's not the thing. So I mean, I'm not a one to drink wine all the time. So I totally get what you're saying about how it's not something that's in your wheelhouse, but I do enjoy a glass from time to time. So, but
Usually,
yeah, go ahead.
usually, if we do pick up wine, it is um, the 19 Crimes or the Apothic brands.
Okay, yeah.
So, like cheap to mid tier for the bottle.
Well, so it's kind of interesting when you say that. And I don't know if you watch Shark Tank at all, but Mr. Wonderful, he is the connoisseur or the sommelier when it comes to wine, and he's got a couple of his in his own portfolio. And I feel like this is pretty true when you're looking at wines for that consumers typically buy. The average people,
Mhm.
like you and me, not someone that's like, oh, I'd take the 1940 whatever.
Right.
You're looking at anything about $10 to $15.
Yeah.
That's gonna be your pricey wine. That's gonna be your expensive, like, hey, I'm gonna buy this, and it's kind of like a fancy thing.
Mhm.
Most of them, the wines that you can pay like $8 for, are gonna be right around the same thing too.
Oh
Now,
wow.
if yeah, I mean, if you go to the grocery store and you find the Apothic for like $10 or $12, that's gonna be your higher end. Like, okay, I'm spending $12 on this.
Hmm.
Um, so just keep that in mind that even though the Apothics and whatnot are probably that $12 to $15 range, you're actually within that price point for just a normal consumer.
Oh wow.
Now, if you
I,
want to get fancy, if you want to be one of them, pretentious dudes with your pinky up while you drink it, then obviously you can get some of those bottles of wines, hundreds of dollars, even thousands, depending on how long they've been aged and, where it was made and the type of grapes and what season. And did the, winery dude have, a cough when he was brewing it? Like,
it's like I've seen it before. I've seen it in the wine aisle. I don't know if it's a wine, but it's like this bottle that's been brewed by monks, and it goes for like $200 a bottle. And I'm like, that's cool, but what if I have the monk that decided that it wasn't his day and he spits in my wine? Is that why it's $200 a bottle? You know?
I think for that one, because they do beer as well. There's a couple monks somewhere in Germany or Belgium that do the same thing, and I think it's because it's such a limited release. They only make like 40 barrels,
Mm,
and it's like one of the better wines or better beers. That's the reason why they can charge $200 for it, because it's like, all right, you're only gonna get this once a year,
right.
and we're gonna use the simplest materials, whatever, and it's gonna be one of the best ones you're gonna taste. So I can totally see that.
I
But
don't know, man.
well, some of the other wineries I checked out when I was there, Behringer's really good. I mean, they're definitely known for having some of the first things that we've seen on wineries, and first one to give public tours, and this was back in the 30s.
Oh, wow.
So they started in 1880 something. They've been doing this for a long time now. I can't remember if they were one of the first wineries in the U.S. or if they're the longest operating ones, because obviously there've been some wineries. It's just like Yingling. Like Yingling is the oldest brewery and operated brewery here in the United States, but they weren't the first one.
Hmm.
There've been plenty of breweries before them that just kind of went under and didn't have anything afterwards. So like Yingling has been there for that long, and they've continued.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder if Behringer is the same way. Like I wonder if they have been one of the longest running wineries.
Let's see if the old Google machine can tell us.
Yeah, I know, but yeah, they started real in the late 1800s, like 1870 something is when they finally bought a piece of land, I think.
Oldest wineries in the world. Ranked number one is Stepford and it was established in 862 AD.
Put the U.S. after that just to see
Yeah.
what the oldest winery in the United States is.
Yeah. Oldest winery in America is Brotherhood Winery.
Brotherhood. Okay.
Let's see if they're
Where's that
still
at?
in business.
All right,
Yeah.
keep that up. I'll talk about the third one that I went to. It was the Mondavi Winery. So I like Mondavi as well. They usually have some pretty good wines. A lot of them are white. I like their Sauvignon Blanc. It's a usually unpopular, but I enjoy Sauvignon Blancs though. Um, the other thing about Mondavi, which I thought was super cool, was that they had some nice little tours that they can take you around. So this wasn't my favorite one. Like I said, the Coppola one was probably my favorite. But what I found out though is that apparently him and his younger brother had a big ass feud when they were younger, and then didn't like do anything for the longest time, and they each had their own wines. And what they did is, after they kind of reconciled everything, this was 2005. I think you got me.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So like I was saying, um, Mondavi and his younger brother were having a big feud, and when they finally came back together, he was old as hell when this. So he died in 2008, and this is 2005, and so they used grapes from their vineyards, and they produced 1 barrel of this Cabernet blend. Man, try to guess how much that shit sold for. 1 barrel,
Are we talking in today's money or back in that time frame?
five. So I would say today's money.
So sold in 2005, $1.6 million.
Oh man, that's way high.
Okay.
It was only 400K, but
Oh
still
well,
for 1 barrel, four hundred
yeah,
thousand dollars.
yeah. Ugh.
But so it was interesting to say the least. Did you happen to find out what was the oldest one?
It is Brotherhood, America's oldest winery. So Brotherhood Winery, located in Washingtonville, New York.
That's surprising.
Yeah. They actually started doing tours in, I believe it said 1947. But they still do wine to this day. It looks like they do some champagne. They do a bunch of like flavored wine. Do you know like apple, peach?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Looks like they do a variety of Pinot Noirs, Rieslings, Chardonnays, some rosés. They got some sangria. They have something called hashtag Bay Wine, um, which is probably targeted to the more white girl amongst the crowd.
Hmm.
And it is like black cherry wine, watermelon flavored wine, pineapple flavored wine, peach. Uh, they have a Riesling, a sparkling rosé wine, and Riesling in a can.
So
And
when
I'm
when
not
do
gonna
they
lie to you
start?
when I say this. You remember Boone's Farm?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Poor man's champagne.
the bottle kind of reminds me of Classy Boone's Farm.
Oh yeah.
So, and it's retailing for $9.99. So I mean, it's high end cheap wine, as we all learned.
So when do they start then? If it's the oldest one, they start in the 1800s.
Um, they started selling grapes out of their storefront in 1824. By 1835, they established their vineyard. Um, and it looks like there's no start date, but if I were had to guess, they probably started when the vineyard was set up, so
Yeah,
1835.
maybe even 1836 to give the
Oh,
grapes a little bit of time to grow, right?
wait, nope. Actually, releasing his first commercial vintage in 1839.
Okay.
So took 4 years.
So still, you're looking at like 40 years from some of the people in California doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Well, maybe we can revise or revisit that when we hit New York.
right.
But one of the things that I also wanted to just mention before we move on to some of the things that you're going to talk about was some of the grapes. One thing that I found out, man, 10,000 different variety of grapes that are available in the world.
How? You
I have,
find two at the store, and then you find old grapes, which are raisins.
but what's super cool about some of the grapes though is that obviously there's a lot of varieties, and each one will give you kind of a different flavor, different taste.
Smuckers.
But I didn't realize that some of those grapes were named after the wine. Like that's the stupid thing where you get, like Merlot. Oh, well, there's Merlot grapes. Or Cabernet Sauvignon. Oh, there's Cabernet Sauvignon grapes.
Hmm.
So I find that to be interesting. Like your Syrah or even Tempranillo grapes. Like I just didn't realize that there was so actually just, and that's where the names come from.
Right. Yeah, that's a lot more grapes than I thought there were. That's for sure. But then again, like when you get into like
Yeah, and again,
Latin names of stuff and like breaking down the genetic and scientific terms, it gets wild.
but I've been, again, we've said to wineries in California and even in New Jersey and other places, and I like the ones where you can go pick them off the vine and try them
Mhm.
that way, and you can taste some of them are definitely sweeter than others. So it's my recommendation is to, if you're going to go to a winery, at least in California or somewhere, see if you can get a tour where you can taste some of the grapes, and then see if that will do anything with some of the wine that you're going to drink. But yeah, what do you got for smoke? That's what you're going to talk about, right? Smoke.
Yes. And got exited
magically
out.
disappeared.
Yeah. Well, I was closing out other tabs because we're having some internet connection issues, and I was like, well, let me stop running all these tabs, and yeah,
You got rid of the
got
one
rid of the
tab, the
one.
one and only.
Right. However, essentially, if we go back in terms of smoke, California was the first state to start using legal medical marijuana back in 1996. Um, after Proposition 64 legalized recreational marijuana, sorry, the legislature passed the Medical and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, or MAU CRSA, creating a combined regulatory system for both medical and recreational marijuana. Um, there are different ways you can get marijuana through this. You're gonna have to have symptoms for medical, and you go through your doctor, and it's a whole deal. But it was kind of interesting to see that a state that's very liberal with using medical marijuana for good things like this kind of takes an abrupt turn when it comes to tobacco products. Um, and as recently as August 28, 2020, there's a bill, Senate Bill 793, prohibiting the sale of most flavored tobacco, including menthol cigarettes and like cigars, hookahs, and stuff like that. Um, However, they ended up taking the menthol cigarette aspect out of it because I'm not really sure why. That's probably something that had to do with the ATF. Um, However, there was some
Um,
good that came out of that. So one of the good things that came out of this in banning the flavored cigarettes bill is that they noticed a 43% decrease in underage smokers.
yeah, I think that kind of goes along with the new 21 bill, where you have to be 21 in order to buy tobacco products.
Right.
So I think they're getting rid of some of those flavor things just to not advertise to young kids, like, oh, hey, this tastes like peach or this tastes like grape, and then have that kind of addicted side to it.
Right, which I can understand, because especially growing up in the '90s, you would see commercials, and just throwing this out there, there'd be like lemon lime cool menthol cigarettes, and you'd be like, I like lemon lime, while you're drinking a Sprite, and then you'd be like curious about cigarettes now, and
Um, was that true for commercials? Because I thought they put a ban on TV commercials because of that whole entire thing. Take a look at what that was, because I know that they didn't do it off of alcohol, because obviously we see beer commercials and stuff like that. But I thought they got rid of video commercials for tobacco, but you can still advertise in magazines and billboards and crap like that.
how funny would it be if this was one of those no campaigns where it was
Yeah.
like showing kids what you shouldn't be doing and like trying to teach kids awareness about them, but I was just more interested in them. Um,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they blocked that.
yeah, actually, it looks like on April 1st, 1970, Richard Nixon signs legislation officially banning
Oh
cigarette
yeah.
ads on television and radio. Um, and so, yeah, probably what I ended up seeing was the reverse of that, which was actually an awareness campaign ad that was like, hey, don't smoke, but here are flavored cigarettes because we're targeting children. So that's kind of interesting. Little, I reverse psychology myself.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I did
Yeah, I
see
thought
in
so.
here is under the cigar ban that they're working on, it it almost seems like it's, I don't know how to put this correctly. So if this offends anybody, I'm sorry. It seems like almost racial targeting because the cigars that they're going after have to be hand rolled. The filter on them or their filler has to be made of real tobacco. It can't be made out of wood or fiber or like a false thing. Um, they have to be hand capped, and also they have to be wholesale of more than $12.
Wow.
Anybody's ever been to a gas station, I can tell you right now, Black and Milds don't cost $12 wholesale. They just don't. And if you look at the push for, banning menthol cigarettes and, banning cigars like that type, it appears to be like they are targeting a certain demographic, if you will. And the statistics show that that specific demographic.
Man, so California is really hitting some of the people hard with this cigar stuff.
Mhm.
And you said hookah too? They did something with hookah?
Yep. Hookah, it has to be. It's really weird. In hookah, you can only sell hookah. It can be whatever flavor you want it to be, but you have to have a license to be able to sell it to people over 21. Which, now I don't know how true this is because you hear all these rumors. It is um supposed to be way worse for you than regular cigarettes.
Yeah, because of the brick, that the heating element and stuff that's on top. Apparently
Hmm.
you inhale that whole entire thing, which is worse
Yeah,
than cigarettes. But man, you remember smoking hookah?
I do.
There was that one place that was down the road from us,
Yep.
and all the crazy flavors, and man, that was such a weird place.
Yeah, it was too because it tried to be a campus style restaurant that would serve the
Yeah.
college kids, but they had a liquor license. I believe they even had a bartender, and upstairs they served hookah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then you could have booze brought to you if you wanted,
right.
but it was still like a weird, it was out on the patio, but it had like the roll up windows so that when it got cold out you can still smoke outside, but it was that was a weird little place. Do you know if that's still there?
It is, but it's not the same business. A food joint actually ended up taking it over, and it's become a chain now. They make really good stuffed breadsticks.
Okay. Yeah, it's been
So
it's been a hot minute since I've been up that way, so who knows what's changed, but that's pretty funny. So when we're looking at marijuana for
oh,
California,
I need
did
to interrupt here. I'm
oh yeah,
sorry. The 47% statistics that I threw out earlier
yeah,
was actually wrong. Um, Essentially, it is based on a report by the FDA in 2011. The theory was removing menthol cigarettes from the marketplace would lead to 39% of all people who smoke menthol quitting and 47% of the specific targeted group quitting. However, the actual number of percentage that appears to smoke menthol on the regular out of that specific category is around 85%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's way more than what I thought it was based off the numbers giving here.
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting that California is doing stuff like that. Like you said, they have a big medical and even marijuana now because it's recreational. But then they're doing so much with tobacco. And if you look at the research between the two, obviously, marijuana, there's not a big link between cancer, at least lung cancer, when it comes to that versus cigarette smoke. But there's still a pretty big deal when it comes to things like bronchitis or COPD if you're smoking or you're inhaling that. So I wonder why. I wonder if marijuana is just making that much more money.
I mean, I know people who have medical marijuana cards for good reason. And I can just put it this way, it is a hell of a lot cheaper to buy from the black market.
Yeah, but again, when you regulate it, you know exactly what you get.
Yeah, but if you go from the same guy that you've been buying marijuana from for the past 5 years, you also know what you're gonna get, you know.
Yeah, true.
So, because like, uh, mother, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. If you were to buy an ounce of marijuana on the black market, I know this because I know people who buy ridiculous amounts. You're looking at $425 an ounce.
I guess it depends on the quality on that one.
Right. If you buy medical grade, you could be looking at anywhere from $700 to $800 an ounce.
Again, though, they can tell you how much THC is in it, and they can give
Right.
you a better. So you got your positives and negatives.
Right. So I'm just saying though, like if you going through that much in a week, you're gonna need more than marijuana. You're gonna need Jesus.
At that point, why don't you just change it up to the wax or get some of uh, the other things that are just way more potent. You don't need
Yeah.
as much.
I don't know what the well, I would assume because you can find CBD and you can find CBD oils and THC based oils pretty much anywhere. So at that point, is it like a user preference, if you will?
Yeah, I don't know,
So I don't know. But
but California, they're doing whatever it is, and they're raking in a bunch of money doing it. So
if you're gonna do drugs responsibly, kids.
yes, and that deals even with alcohol
Oh
and
yeah, for sure. I would
you know,
honestly say probably do alcohol more responsibly.
true. Well, you got anything else for California that you had in mind?
Mm, I mean, not really.
I think that kind of wraps it up then, because that gives us everything we've had. Episode 1 was all about the different foods, and I know we didn't hit all of them.
No.
And even this, I mean, there's probably some breweries that maybe I missed out, but I felt like California is more known for its wine than anything else. So
Right. Like when I think California, that's kind of what I think. I think wine.
yeah, I mean, they do have good beer out there too, but I think wine is still the number one thing that someone thinks about when they hear Cali.
Yeah. And like I said, you also have the problem of thinking about California when you try to think about anything good coming from California. So
Well, you want to take us out?
yeah. Sorry for the more educational based episode and going into laws and stuff like that. But if this is something you're interested in, write in the comments below. Oh, and I forgot to say, speaking of the comments, I've been hiding something from the professor here.
Oh boy.
So the old lords of YouTube tend not to tell me when I get messages, right?
Oh really?
Yeah. And so one of the foodies was so kind to reach out to me directly. He's like, hey, on this one video you have here, you might want to go into the comment section and delete it. And I looked at it, and hey, we got our first sex bot trolling for money on the BDSM podcast.
That is great.
Yeah. So, way to go, sex bot. You know, if you want to work out a deal, we'll send people your way, and you know what? We'll just take like a 1% cut.
Yeah, what episode was it on?
The Father's Day episode can be.
Oh my god, that's even better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, we got our first one, so
got our
we'll
first
see
one.
what happens.
Yeah. So, yeah. If for whatever reasons you see something like that on our videos, just know that YouTube hasn't either kicked it or informed me yet. Get a hold of either me or the professor if you guys know us, and we will get it taken care of.
Yeah.
So, unless they start paying us, then sorry, click it if you like.
Yes. If there's money involved, I mean, we can't guarantee anything on your end.
Right? So, but it's been a fun one. Like I said, I've been the Meat Viking, and this has been my wonderful co-host, Professor Porcupine.
We were signing out for California. Wait until we get to the next state.
Right.